It was a calm, sunny afternoon at Maple Grove Park. Families were strolling along the paths, children were laughing on the swings, and joggers were enjoying their routine runs. Everything seemed normal, until one arrogant park guard decided to make a mistake he would regret for the rest of his life. Guard Thompson was notorious for his attitude. He believed that power came from fear and intimidation. Staff whispered about his hot temper, and visitors learned quickly to avoid eye contact with him. He strutted through the park, chest out, eyes scanning for anyone who didn't belong. And then he saw him. A man, dressed casually in jeans and a simple jacket, walked into the park alone. No entourage, no bodyguards, no flashy entrance, just calm, composed steps. That man was Steven Seagal. Thompson sneered at the man's calm demeanor. "Who does he think he is?" he muttered under his breath. With arrogance fueling him, Thompson decided to make an example out of this stranger. "Hey, you can't just walk around here like you own the place." Steven stopped. He turned slowly, meeting Thompson's eyes with a calm, steady gaze. Not a hint of anger. Not a flicker of fear. "I'm just here for a walk," Steven said softly. "No trouble, no fanfare." But arrogance blinds even the most confident people. Thompson ignored the warning in Steven's tone. He took a step closer, puffing out his chest, and without hesitation, he kicked Steven Seagal in the face. The reaction was immediate. Time seemed to freeze. People stopped in their tracks. Children on the swings paused mid-laugh. Joggers mid-stride halted. A wave of shock swept across the park. The arrogant guard laughed, certain he had proven himself. But what happened next would shock everyone far more than the kick itself. Seconds later, the entire park witnessed a lesson in humility, patience, and silent power that no one would ever forget. It was a moment that would make headlines in the minds of everyone who saw it. And it all started with one wrong move. It was a sunny afternoon at Maple Grove Park, one of the busiest parks in the city. Children ran between swings and slides, couples strolled hand in hand, and joggers traced the winding paths under the shade of towering oak trees. Everything seemed ordinary, peaceful, and calm, until one man walked in who would change the atmosphere completely. At the heart of the park, Guard Thompson patrolled with an air of arrogance. He believed the park was his kingdom, and every visitor was a subject he could boss around. He strutted down the path with his chest puffed out, gold badge shining under the sun, and eyes scanning for anyone who dared disobey his rules. Thompson wasn't subtle. He shouted at staff for the smallest mistakes, waved his authority around, and made sure every visitor knew exactly who was in charge. Most people avoided him. Staff whispered behind his back, muttering about his short temper and aggressive behavior. But the moment someone stepped into his perceived territory, Thompson's arrogance would explode. And then he saw him. A man walked into the park with the confidence of someone completely at ease. Jeans, a simple jacket, casual shoes, and a calm demeanor. No entourage. No flashy gadgets. No guards. Just a man walking quietly through the entrance, nodding politely to passers-by, smiling faintly at children. It was Steven Seagal. Thompson's eyebrows shot up. "Who does he think he is?" he muttered under his breath, disgusted by the lack of apparent respect or fear in this stranger. He stepped closer, puffed up his chest, and decided it was time to assert dominance. "Hey, you can't just walk around here like you own the place." Steven stopped. He turned slowly to face Thompson, his expression calm and collected. Not a single muscle in his face betrayed irritation. His voice was soft but firm. "I'm just here for a walk. No trouble, no fanfare." But arrogance is blind. Thompson saw only what he wanted, a chance to prove himself. He misread the calm confidence as weakness. "Move along, old man," he barked. "This is my park, and I don't tolerate disrespect." Park visitors began to notice the tension. Some stopped mid-step. A few parents pulled their children closer. Joggers slowed, sensing that something was about to happen. Yet, Steven didn't flinch. He just smiled faintly and nodded, a gesture that seemed almost serene. Thompson, fueled by ego, ignored all warning signs. He stepped forward aggressively. "I said move. Or else," he shouted. His hand rose, and in one reckless motion, He kicked Steven Seagal in the face. Time seemed to freeze for a moment. The crowd gasped. Phones were raised to record the shocking moment. Children stopped playing, joggers froze mid-stride, and even the park squirrels seemed to pause in disbelief. The guard laughed, thinking he had won. He thought he had proven his authority. He didn't notice the shift in the atmosphere, the sudden hush that fell over everyone. It was as if the air itself had changed. People leaned in, craning their necks, some whispering, "Is that Steven Seagal?" "It can't be." But it was. And Thompson had no idea what he had just done. Because sometimes, arrogance blinds the strongest eyes. And sometimes, calm power waits patiently, until the perfect moment to strike back. Seconds later, the entire park would witness a lesson in humility and respect unlike anything they had ever seen. But for now, all they could do was hold their breath and watch. The kick landed with a sharp smack, echoing across the park. Guard Thompson's arrogance had led him to believe that this would humiliate the man before him. But he had no idea who he was dealing with. For a heartbeat, the park seemed frozen. Children stopped mid-laugh, joggers halted in their tracks, and even the birds above fell silent. Visitors whispered among themselves, pointing and staring. Phones were raised, ready to capture the scene. The audacity of the act left everyone in shock. Thompson, chest heaving and chest puffed out, laughed arrogantly. "Huh. Thought you could stroll in here like some VIP, old man? Guess not." Steven Seagal didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He stood perfectly still, his calm demeanor unwavering. His eyes locked onto Thompson's with a gaze so steady and intense that it made the arrogant guard pause, if only for a fleeting moment. "Sometimes," Steven said quietly, voice calm yet commanding, "the ones who believe they are strong forget to see who they are really facing." The words were soft, but they carried the weight of decades of martial arts mastery and life experience. Thompson smirked, dismissing it as empty talk. "Yeah, right," he sneered. "You think a few words impress me? I control this park." Steven didn't respond. Instead, he shifted his stance slightly, almost imperceptibly, like a predator preparing for a controlled strike. The crowd didn't notice at first, too focused on the absurdity of the guard's actions. But there was a shift in the energy, a subtle, tense vibration that everyone could feel. Thompson, still cocky, took another step forward, chest forward, fists clenched. "You better move, or I'll—" Before he could finish, Steven moved. But it wasn't fast in the way people would expect. There was no flurry, no dramatic lunge. Just a calm, precise motion that immobilized Thompson. One hand on his arm, another guiding his balance, and the guard found himself firmly held, unable to resist. The crowd gasped collectively. Some gasped in disbelief, others whispered hurriedly, "Is that Steven Seagal?" The realization hit like lightning. The man they had all casually admired from afar was not just a visitor. He was a master of his craft, and Thompson had just made the gravest mistake of his life. The guard's face drained of color. His arrogance faltered as he realized the mistake he had made. Every ounce of confidence vanished in an instant. The laughter that had filled his mind disappeared, replaced by the sharp clarity of fear. I didn't know who you were," Thompson stammered, struggling against Steven's calm but firm grip. Steven looked down at him, expression unreadable. His voice was low, calm, but cutting through the tension like steel. "Respect isn't something you demand with fear. It's something you earn through behavior, through humility, through understanding." The crowd watched in awe as the once arrogant guard trembled. The lesson was clear. This wasn't about retaliation or anger. It was about silent power, patience, and the undeniable authority that comes from mastery and self-control. People whispered, some capturing every detail on their phones, some just standing in stunned silence. Every visitor in the park, from children to parents to joggers, felt the weight of the moment. The arrogance of one man had been checked instantly, without shouting, without violence, just presence, control, and respect. Seconds stretched like minutes. The conflict wasn't over yet, but the message was already clear. Actions born of arrogance against someone calm and prepared often end in immediate regret. And for Guard Thompson, that regret would be etched into memory forever. The moment the guard's kick connected with Steven Seagal, the park went silent, But that silence quickly turned into a storm of shock and murmurs. Visitors froze, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. Phones appeared everywhere, capturing the moment, as everyone realized something extraordinary had just occurred. Steven didn't retaliate, didn't shout, didn't even flinch. He simply stood there, calm and composed, his eyes fixed on the now staggering guard. The contrast was jarring. The arrogant man, red-faced and trembling, had expected fear or pain, yet all he got was controlled calm. I didn't know," Thompson stammered, panic slowly creeping into his voice. People around the park whispered to each other, craning their necks to get a better look. "Is that really Steven Seagal?" It has to be. I've seen him in movies, but in person?" The sheer disbelief was palpable. Children clutched their parents' hands, joggers stopped mid-stride, and even other park guards watched from a distance, unsure whether to approach or stay put. It was a scene that felt unreal, like a moment out of a movie, yet happening right before their eyes. Thompson tried to regain his composure, straightening his back and puffing out his chest. He raised a hand, attempting to assert authority. I am the park guard here. You." Before he could finish, Steven moved with calm precision. He stepped closer, his presence immediately demanding attention, yet without aggression. With a subtle motion, he shifted the guard's stance, unbalancing him just enough to force him to the ground without striking a single blow. The crowd gasped collectively. Some dropped their phones in shock, others instinctively leaned back, afraid they were witnessing something dangerous. But it wasn't danger that filled the air, it was a lesson in authority, humility, and respect. An elderly woman standing near the path whispered to her friend, "I've never seen anyone handle arrogance like that. It's perfect." Parents pulled their children closer, murmuring, "See? You don't get respect by yelling or hitting. Look at him. Calm, composed." Thompson's face turned pale. His bravado evaporated like mist. For the first time, he felt powerless, and the realization hit him harder than any physical blow could. Every visitor, from joggers to families, could sense it. The man he had tried to humiliate was no ordinary person. He was a master of control, of calm strength, and of patience. Even the other park guards began whispering among themselves. "Did you see that? He didn't even fight back. He just controlled him. Effortlessly. That was Steven Seagal. It has to be." Meanwhile, the crowd began to record more aggressively, aware they were witnessing a moment they would tell everyone about. The whispers turned into gasps, then murmurs of admiration. Even strangers started congratulating Steven silently, nodding and stepping back to give him space. Thompson tried to speak again, his voice shaky. I didn't mean to disrespect." Steven's gaze held him in place, unwavering. A calm authority emanated from every inch of his presence. His silence said more than any words could. Arrogance will always meet its match if faced with patience and skill. By now, the energy in the park had shifted completely. Where there had been tension and fear, there was awe. Where there had been arrogance, there was humility. And for the first time, the crowd saw the real power of restraint and presence. Seconds stretched. Minutes felt like hours. People whispered, gasped, and recorded everything. Every pair of eyes in Maple Grove Park was fixed on Steven Seagal. And Thompson, once so proud and arrogant, now trembled, realizing the consequences of his foolish actions were only beginning to unfold. The park went completely silent. All eyes were fixed on Steven Seagal and the trembling guard at his feet. Families, joggers, and other park visitors couldn't believe what they were witnessing. The man who had just been kicked, calm, collected, and seemingly unbothered, was now about to turn the situation completely on its head. Steven took a step back, letting the guard regain some balance, but not giving him freedom. His presence alone was enough to command attention. Every muscle, every movement, radiated quiet authority. The crowd leaned in, sensing that the next moment would reveal everything. And then it happened. A sleek black car pulled up at the park entrance. The engine hummed softly, but it carried a weight of importance that even casual visitors noticed. From the vehicle, 3 suited executives rushed out, carrying folders and official documents. Their eyes were fixed on Steven. "Mr. Seagal, we've been waiting for you, sir," one of them shouted, running toward him. The crowd murmured, shocked and confused. Some held their phones higher, trying to capture the unfolding scene. Children clutched their parents' hands, eyes wide, as if they were watching a live movie. Wait. Mr. Seagal? You mean, that's him? Thompson stammered, his voice cracking. The arrogance that had filled him moments ago had completely drained. Yes, Steven replied calmly, his voice steady. I'm the one you've just tried to humiliate. And now, it seems, you're about to learn a very important lesson. The executives handed him the documents, official papers confirming that Steven Seagal was now the majority owner of Maple Grove Park. Gasps echoed through the park. Visitors exchanged bewildered glances. Joggers stopped mid-stride. Parents whispered urgently to their children. Even other security staff froze in disbelief. Thompson's face turned as pale as paper. He sank to his knees, realizing for the first time the magnitude of his mistake. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were, he stammered, trembling. That's exactly the problem, Steven said, his tone calm but commanding. Arrogance blinds you to reality. Power without respect is meaningless. The crowd erupted in murmurs and whispers. Some visitors stepped closer, craning their necks to catch every detail. One jogger whispered to another, "That's unreal. He just got owned by a park guard mistake, and now he owns the park?" Steven glanced around at the people who had witnessed the incident. His gaze was steady, confident, yet not threatening. It carried a silent message: respect matters more than power, and humility is stronger than arrogance. Turning back to Thompson, he continued, "I came here for a simple walk. I didn't come to make a scene. But your arrogance forced my hand, in more ways than one." The crowd could barely keep still. Phones were recording, live streams were being whispered about, and parents were quietly explaining to their children that what they had just witnessed was a lesson in humility and respect. "From this moment forward," Steven said, addressing not just Thompson but the entire park staff, "anyone who works here must understand that authority is not about intimidation. It's about responsibility and respect." Thompson's knees hit the ground harder this time, fully realizing the irony and humiliation. The man who thought he ruled the park had just been shown that true authority comes from calm power, not bluster. Visitors began whispering to each other, nodding in agreement. One child tugged at their parent's sleeve and said, "Mom, he's like a superhero." A jogger murmured, "That's the real lesson, respect before power." The park had transformed from an ordinary afternoon into a living demonstration of humility, control, and respect, a moment that everyone there would remember for the rest of their lives. And Thompson, once arrogant and proud, now trembled, finally understanding the full weight of his mistake. The reveal was complete. The man he had tried to humiliate was not just a stranger. He was the master, the owner, and the teacher of a lesson Thompson would never forget. The tension in the park hung thick like a storm cloud. Visitors, staff, and even other guards held their breath as Steven Seagal stood silently, radiating calm authority. The arrogant park guard, Thompson, knelt on the ground, his pride shattered, his face pale with fear and shame. For the first time in his life, he felt completely powerless. Steven looked around at the gathered crowd, who were all still whispering, some recording on their phones, others staring wide-eyed. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout commands. All he did was stand there, and that alone was enough to command respect. "This park," Steven began, his voice calm yet resonant, "is more than just a place for walking or jogging. It's a space for people to enjoy, to find peace, and to feel safe. Authority here is not about fear. It's about respect. And today, that lesson needed to be taught." The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding slowly. Even the other park guards shifted uncomfortably, realizing the truth in Steven's words. Thompson's attempts to assert control earlier now seemed pathetic and hollow in comparison. Steven turned to Thompson, who was still kneeling, trembling. "You thought you could command respect through fear," Steven said softly. "But real respect comes from behavior, from humility, and from understanding your place in the world." Thompson swallowed hard. Tears welled in his eyes. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know who you were. I didn't mean any harm," he stammered, his voice cracking. "That's exactly the problem," Steven replied. "You shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with respect. Your arrogance blinded you. But now, you have a choice. Learn from this, or continue down a path that will only humiliate you further. For a moment, Thompson said nothing. The weight of the situation pressed down on him. Around him, the crowd watched silently, realizing that this wasn't just about a park guard or a celebrity. It was a lesson in humility, patience, and human decency. Steven's gaze then shifted to the one person in the crowd who had remained respectful from the very beginning, an older clerk who had quietly watched, never judging, never mocking. "From today forward," Steven said, "you will take on a greater responsibility. Your attitude, patience, and respect for others are qualities this park needs. You are now the acting supervisor here." The crowd erupted in whispers and soft applause. The clerk stepped forward, humbled and honored, realizing that their calm behavior had been noticed and rewarded. Steven then turned back to Thompson. "Consider this a second chance. Learn from it. Show respect to everyone, even those who seem ordinary. That is the true measure of character." Thompson nodded vigorously, tears streaming down his face. I will, sir. I promise. I've learned my lesson." Without another word, Steven Seagal turned and walked toward the park exit, his movements calm and measured, leaving behind an atmosphere transformed by quiet power and undeniable authority. The crowd followed him with their eyes, still processing what had just happened. Parents whispered to their children, explaining that strength is not measured by how loud you are or how aggressive you act, but by how you carry yourself and treat others. Joggers, cyclists, and other visitors who had stopped to watch began murmuring excitedly to each other. "Did you see that? That was incredible. He didn't even raise his voice. That's how real power looks." The lesson was clear and unforgettable. Arrogance can give a false sense of control, but calm confidence, patience, and respect always win in the end. The park had returned to normal activity, but the energy was different. Lighter, more respectful, more aware. Everyone who had witnessed the event knew they had been part of a story they would tell for years. And for Thompson, the arrogant guard, it was a moment he would never forget, a chance for redemption, a lesson in humility, and a warning that actions born of arrogance often lead to immediate regret. The park returned to its usual rhythm, but the echoes of the day's events would linger, a lasting reminder of silent strength and earned respect. As the sun began to dip behind the trees of Maple Grove Park, the crowd slowly dispersed, yet the energy of what had just happened lingered in the air. Children tugged at their parents' hands, asking questions. Joggers paused mid-path, replaying the scene in their minds. Even the park staff walked more carefully, quietly reflecting on the events that had unfolded. It was clear, no one would forget this day anytime soon. Steven Seagal had left the park calmly, almost silently, but the impact of his presence remained immense and unforgettable. What had started as a simple afternoon walk had become a powerful lesson for everyone present, a real-life demonstration of humility, respect, and true strength. At the heart of the lesson was something simple, yet profound. Respect is not earned by wealth, power, or fear. Respect is earned by how you treat others, consistently, thoughtfully, and with humility. The arrogant park guard, Thompson, had learned this lesson in the hardest possible way. He had tried to assert dominance, to humiliate someone he underestimated, and in an instant, he had been humbled. The lesson wasn't delivered with anger or cruelty. It was delivered with calm authority, precision, and quiet power. It was a demonstration of something far more valuable than force: self-control, dignity, and presence. The crowd that had witnessed the event left the park buzzing with conversation. Parents explained to their children why Steven's actions mattered. "It's not about being the strongest physically," one mother said. "It's about being strong in character. The way you treat others matters more than the way you act when you think no one is watching." Some visitors discussed the incident online immediately, uploading videos and sharing their perspectives. Many commented on how incredible it was that a single person, without shouting or using aggression, could completely shift the dynamics of an entire park, teaching everyone a lesson that would last a lifetime. Even the other park guards and staff reflected on the day's events. They realized that humility and respect are not weaknesses, but signs of true strength. Arrogance, on the other hand, is fragile. One wrong move, one lapse in judgment, and it can all come crashing down, as Thompson had just discovered. Steven Seagal's actions were a reminder that real power is not about intimidation, force, or showing off. True power is calm. True power is measured in how one carries themselves, in the respect they show to everyone, even those who may seem insignificant. It's about patience, self-control, and the quiet confidence to handle any situation with dignity. As the day came to a close, the moral of the story became clear. Always show respect, because one day, the person you underestimate could be the one who changes everything around you. Arrogance may seem powerful in the moment, but humility endures. Patience prevails. Respect is remembered. So here's the challenge to everyone reading this. Reflect on how you treat others in your everyday life. Are you patient? Are you kind? Do you act with humility even when you feel overlooked or unappreciated? Because the lessons Steven Seagal taught that day extend far beyond Maple Grove Park. They apply to workplaces, schools, families, and every interaction we have. Type respect in the comments if you believe humility is a real sign of strength. Share where you're watching from, and let's celebrate everyone who treats others with dignity, no matter the circumstances. Remember this: true power is silent. True respect is earned. Arrogance may give temporary control, but it can vanish in an instant. Humility and respect, on the other hand, last a lifetime, leaving lessons that inspire everyone who witnesses them. Maple Grove Park returned to its normal rhythm, but the echoes of that day, of calm authority, of strength through restraint, of the lesson delivered without anger, would remain forever in the minds of those who were there. And for Thompson, the arrogant park guard, it was a humbling reminder that one moment of arrogance can change your life forever, but one lesson in humility can change it for the better.